I'm David Yeagley, just a follower of Jesus, and I'd like to invite you to live generously. As we begin, I think a confession is in order. From time to time, I struggle with a scarcity mindset. As the director of Sunset Lake Camp going through the pandemic, I often found myself saying, if only I had more money, then I could do great things. If only I had more campers, then I could do great things. If only I had more staff, then I could make things happen. The problem with a scarcity mindset is that it's rooted in a false picture of who God is. It says that God is small, that he's selfish and stingy. But of course, that's not who God is. And so if we want to live generously, then we need to change our picture of God. Danielle Strickland, one of my favorite speakers, was going to speak at a conference in northern Canada. She arrived at the airport only to find out that no one was there to pick her up, so she had to rent a car. She got to the conference center too late for supper, and so she went to get her room, and she was promised a private room, but instead she was bunking in with 4 other women. And by now, Danielle wasn't feeling so charitable. She decided to go to the evening meeting. She wasn't speaking and thought, maybe if I just sit and relax and enjoy the worship, I'll feel better. She walked in through the front doors of the auditorium, and the event organizer met her. Oh, Danielle, I'm so glad you're here. We just had a young couple come to camp, and they need a place to stay. They need to get a bus ticket to head out of town tomorrow, and they need some groceries. We know how passionate you are about serving the underprivileged. I'm wondering if you might be able to help us and take care of this couple. It was the last thing that Danielle wanted to do, but she had to say yes. And so the event organizer gave her the company credit card. She got her rental car, found the couple, and they headed into town to the grocery store. It was the middle of winter in northern Canada. As they stepped in out of the cold and the snow into that warm grocery store, the first thing they smelled was fresh strawberries. Oh, what a smell! And there they were all in front of that door, big and ripe and juicy. But the price, they might as well have been solid gold. You could probably buy them by the strawberry. And Danielle was about to say, no, it's too expensive, when she remembered she had the company credit card in her back pocket. So she turned to this young couple and said, let's buy some strawberries. In fact, let's buy 2 boxes of strawberries. And that's the way it went through the whole store. They went to the bread aisle. Let's not get that Wonder Bread stuff. No, we're going to buy the very finest bread we can get. They went to get some cheese. None of that American cheese stuff. We're getting the really fine European cheese. Aisle after aisle, they found the best foods and the very nicest products, and they bought them all. Their cart was full to overflowing, and they pulled up to the checkout. And ordinarily, Danielle would begin to stress about price as she watched that price climb and climb and climb. She didn't feel her blood pressure rising, no, because she had the company credit card. She swiped the card without giving it a thought, and they took all the groceries, loaded them into the car. They went and got a bus ticket, and then she took this young couple to the hotel. They arrived at the hotel, and Danielle turned around to look at them there in the back seat and said, is there anything else I can do for you? And the young couple looked at each other and thought for a moment, and then they said to Danielle, yes, we want more of this. She said, what do you mean more of this? I can't give you the company credit card if that's what you're asking. Oh, no, they said, we want more of what we experienced tonight, more of this joy, more of this warm feeling we had. We want more of this. And then Danielle had the privilege of introducing this young couple to an abundant God who wanted to meet their every need, who loved them enough to care for every part of their life. And there in that car, she led them to Jesus. How often we forget that we carry the credit card of heaven in our back pocket. In John chapter 15, Jesus says to his disciples, he says, "You didn't choose me, I chose you. And I've revealed all of my Father's and I plans to you. So you're no longer a servant or a slave, you're my friends. And because of that, you can ask for anything in my name, and you can know that you have it." What an amazing promise. And so this evening, there's a question that we need to wrestle with. If you can know that you have the credit card of heaven in your back pocket, if you can go to the throne room of heaven and ask for anything in Jesus' name and receive it, what's your next step? If you really believe it, what's the next thing that you ought to be doing? It's an important question. It's also a dangerous question. Just ask Jessica. I met Jessica when I was in seminary many years ago, and she told me her story. For several months, she began to think that God had bigger plans for her life than she was letting him have. So finally, she gave in to that thought, and she bought a trailer, and she went to a state park in southern Indiana, and she spent 9 months in the woods praying that God could reveal to her what he wanted her to do. What's next, God? If I've got the credit card of heaven, if I can ask for anything I want, if I know that I can't fail, what's my next step, God? The answer surprised her and shocked her. The impression that came over and over again was, "Jessica, I want you to go to Chicago, and I want you to work for the prostitutes there." "God," she said, "you clearly have the wrong person. I'm not a city person. I don't know anything about that kind of ministry. You've got the wrong girl." So she prayed again. "God, what's next? What do you want me to do?" And once again, the impression came, go to Chicago, work for the prostitutes there. Again and again, she fought that calling. Till finally, God reminded her one day that he was an abundant God and that he would provide her with everything she needed to do what he was asking her to do. She had no reason to fear. She'd been praying that God would reveal what's next for her. Finally, she realized that she needed to take that step. So she sold her trailer. She moved out of the campground there in southern Indiana and went to Chicago. She found a cheap upstairs apartment in a slum neighborhood. And that first night there in Chicago, she left her apartment and she went out onto the street. And she walked block after block, street corner after street corner, until finally she saw 3 young women standing there along the street. And she could tell by the way they were dressed, she could tell by their behavior, that these were the 3 women that God had called her to minister to. And so she walked up to them, big smile on her face, and said, "Hi, I'm Jessica. I'd really like to get to know you." And those 3 women turned and looked at her, and with language and gestures that we will not repeat here, said, "Get lost." Jessica had thought a lot about what this first meeting might look like, but she hadn't expected that. She ran back to her apartment. She flopped herself on her bed and she cried, "God, I told you. I told you that you've got the wrong person. I told you I wasn't cut out for this. Why did you bring me here just to fail?" And once again, God reminded her that he was an abundant God, that he had given her everything that she needed. And so once again, she prayed for strength and she prayed for courage. And the next night, she went back out on the streets and she walked street corner after street corner until she found those 3 women. She walked up to them, big smile on her face, and said the same thing. "Hi, I'm Jessica. I'd really like to get to know you." And once again, they turned and in so many words said, "Get lost." Again, Jessica ran back to her apartment, flopped on her bed, and cried. And once again, God reminded her that he was an abundant God. And night after night after night, this happened. Until finally, one evening, Jessica found those same 3 women, and she walked up to them and said, "Hi, I'm Jessica, and I'd really like to get to know you." And those 3 women turned, and this time the words were different. They said, "Who are you? Why do you want to know us? What are you, a cop?" She says, "No, I'm not a cop. I'm an outsider just like you." And I thought that maybe we could get to know each other. And that was the beginning of a multi-year journey for Jessica. As she reached out to these women, they introduced her to other women, and soon she had dozens of women throughout Chicago that she was reaching out to along the street corners and in the brothels. She brought many of these women to Jesus and showed them that there was a better way to live, because she was willing to change the way she thought about God and to see her Heavenly Father as a God of abundance. Here's your assignment. It's a big one, and it's going to take some boldness on your part. But I'd like you to begin to pray that prayer. God, what's next? If you really believe that you have the credit card of heaven in your back pocket, if you really believe that God will supply your every need, that he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, that whatever you ask in his name, he'll give to you. If you really believe it, then what's the next thing that you should do? Spend some time in prayer with that question. You might want to have a journal in front of you and just begin to journal a dialogue with God about that question. God, what's next? God, what's my next step? God, what do you want to do through my life? What does it look like to truly live generously in the service of an abundant God? I believe that finding the answer to that question will change your life and can change the world. I'm David Yeagley, and my call to you today is to live generously.